Thank you. Okay.
Brought a fan, by the way.
Okay. Good evening. We'll call to order the special meeting of the City Council on this day, June 28th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Do I bang the gavel now?
If you want to.
Excellent.
Nicely done.
And we don't need a roll call, but we do. Oh, yeah, roll call. Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
Ames?
Here.
Copeland, Feldman, Flaherty, Flowers,
Here.
Hausman,
Here.
Rotundo,
Here.
Guanci, and Rand.
Here. And Councilor Ames, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Ames. And it's my honor to be leading this special City Council meeting. And always, I am reminded how challenging this role is, and admire President Guanci for doing it with such grace. But happy to have the opportunity to. So tonight we have a pretty small agenda. First up, we have order number 136. And would you please read the order?
Order number 136, Dear Honorable Council, enclosed, please find proposed amendments to Section 113-2C, possession or consumption on public ways in public places or on private property, and Section 192-61, sandwich board signs of the city ordinance concerning alcoholic beverages and signs. The proposed change will allow the city to extend its temporary outdoor dining provisions through the rest of the 2021 season. The new expiration date of April 1st, 2022 is consistent with the extension of the governor's pandemic-era provisions related to the ability to serve alcohol outdoors, which were officially extended to April 1st, 2022 by legislative vote and signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021. Please initiate action on this matter at the special City Council meeting on Monday, June 28th, 2021, with the expectation that the final vote will occur at a future meeting, but before the current expiration of August 14th, 2021. Thank you. Sincerely yours, Darlene Nguyen. Do you want me to read the actual order?
Yes, please. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the proposed amendment, or the ordinance change would read, let's see, it would amend 113-2, possession or consumption on public ways in public places or on private property. And Part C would read, notwithstanding paragraph A, Beverly restaurants may be allowed to operate and serve alcohol on city sidewalks, in parklets, parking spaces, public ways, or other public space, but only upon approval by the Health Department, Municipal Inspections Department, Planning Department, and Public Safety in accordance with standards established by the Planning Department. Any such use is further subject to review and approval by the licensing board, including conditions imposed by such board. This paragraph C shall sunset and be no further force in effect as of April 1st, 2022.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I just want to do full disclosure that I filed a 23B3 with Christine Dixon this morning in regards to the two ordinance in front of us, extending that I can vote on this with unbiased. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks for doing that ahead of time. And we have Ms. Nguyen with us, our planning director. Would you like to just introduce this order, or talk about it, how It's different or the same?
Yeah, the order, which I think about it, is kind of both of them together, but as you know, I think it was last summer, we put into place, well, June or July, we put into place an emergency order so that during the pandemic, the restaurants in Beverly could do outdoor dining, primarily related to serving alcohol outside, and also placing private property on public property. So those are kind of the two pieces of it. We have always tied it to kind of the governor's orders and the timing of, without knowing the timing of the pandemic, so we extended it. After the emergency order, we then made these ordinance amendments, which were a little bit more long-standing, and then we amended it, I think, Originally, we had set it till the end of December, then we amended it until aligning with the end of the state of emergency plus 60 days, which would brought us to August 14th. It's been the administrative policy and intent that we feel like August 15th or 14th is not the right time to just stop outdoor dining. It's been going on successfully, and that we wanted to see it through the end of this season. And so therefore, in alignment with then Governor Baker's order to also extend certain provisions of the state of emergency, we are proposing to align the service of alcohol outdoors across public property through April 1st, 2022, sorry, in the hopes of just allowing outdoor dining to continue. What?
Yeah.
I thought he was calling me over there. I'm like, no, I've never had that happen before. And then so that's Order 136 related to the service of alcohol. Just so you're all aware, we have in place, every restaurant that has done outdoor dining has filled out an application for temporary outdoor dining. We have a number of rules and kind of parameters around that. And then this year, we asked them all to sign a renewal, kind of acknowledge that they would still abide by the same parameters that we put in place, and we tweaked things if necessary. Noise was one, and timing was one that we had to kind of hone in a little bit over the last year. And we reserve the right to handle any situation on an individual basis if there's something that comes up that we need to address, and we've done that. So.
Okay, thank you. And we're not going to be taking a vote on this tonight, but there's still opportunity for questions if counselors have questions for Ms. Nguyen.
I just have just a small question. I think this is great. I was wondering if people in the past, people could not bring their dogs outside. Is that continuing?
That is a Board of Health regulation. I don't know for sure, but I do know that, and I think there was some pandemic provisions put in place.
It was a pandemic
I know that,
provision.
and I only know because I've seen it on Facebook. Gentilly, for example, was not allowing dogs, but now is allowing dogs again.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that has changed.
Thank you.
From a health perspective, but that doesn't apply.
No, I understand. I was just
Yep.
wondering.
Thank you. Any other questions from counselors? Counselor Hausman?
Yeah, just a general question, which is, I imagine that part of the intent here is we've experienced the flexibility that the city could create for our downtown businesses, which we're hurting, our restaurants here as well as around the city and the Commonwealth and the nation. So the intent here really is to provide a boost using the infrastructure that's already in place to help the businesses recover throughout the rest of the summer season and try to make up for what they lost. Are there have there been any discussions about how sort of the way the challenges were met in this crisis could provide some fresh ideas about how we could deal with our streetscape for restaurants past this year, into future years in terms of having more room on the sidewalks specifically, or bump outs on the streets to, continue this as a sort of an ongoing program?
I think, the first part of your question is we used to have a pilot program. Some of the restaurants, actually like Tartine, were established during a pilot outdoor dining program. We took that, which informed our temporary guidelines, but now we're looking at creating a more permanent, and we have drafted a more permanent outdoor dining ordinance that will kind of consider all the factors that we have to take into account. For example, if you add seats, you trigger, potentially you need more toilets, you need more parking, things like that. So we're looking at it that way. I think we have to have a larger conversation about creating more spaces still. That's a conversation I still want to have because, as you know, downtown, we don't have a lot of sidewalk space where the restaurants are. So figuring out where those opportunities might be to create additional opportunities for outdoor dining in a way that's fair, and kind of not rewarding, or maybe it's a temporary, like a week long, like I don't know, a rotating thing, or we create a space. I don't know, but I think that is a conversation that we need to have to see, can maintain some of this momentum from the unique environment that was created. But we have learned lessons in terms of, what's acceptable to people, what's not. I do, in terms of people passing by restaurants and what people are comfortable with. Sometimes just testing these things out, gives you a good chance to see that. But keeping in mind, everybody knows that it's temporary right now. So I think anything in the future would be a greater public hearing process for restaurants that would come through.
Yeah, sure. I guess what I'm sort of thinking is, I mean, this is obviously your department's bailiwick here, but how do they say, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. We've been able to see things that we would never have seen because we were forced to see them in a sense, in terms of how our streetscape could function. So I hope we can take some of the lessons from that and apply it not just as this temporary measure, but use that as a way of thinking down the line about future years, future summers, future seasons, and how we could expand, keep the expansion we have had on our streetscapes going forward. So it's more of a conceptual discussion at the moment, but
And I will add too, because we are participating in this program called the Local Rapid Recovery Plan program with the Mass Downtown Initiative through DHCD. So there's Main Street's applied for that, but we're working with Main Streets, and I think they're working in like half the communities in the state to help figure out how set areas for us, the downtown, what are some plans and projects that can help come out of the recovery. And that's one of them, looking at both event spaces that are not necessarily closing down the streets, but other opportunities to have events, and making the outdoor dining more permanent. So hopefully, maybe we'll see if we get any good ideas for them on the physical space, because they're very much physical planners. And then that'll be our next step.
yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilor Flaherty, and then Councilor Rotundo after.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to endorse this. I'm not really asking any questions, but I was on Saturday night, I was out to dinner downtown, and it was a great atmosphere, like kind of what Council Hausman talked about. But it's also a silver lining, I think, through this pandemic, that this opportunity was available for some of these restaurants. Even before the pandemic, restaurants in downtown sometimes struggle, and I think it's a good opportunity to do different things differently. And I think the only thing we have to be careful of, there are also other businesses in downtown who need the parking that don't need the restaurant parking. They lose a couple spots, and I'm sure you're well aware of that. But I think if we can, work on all this together with Main Streets and with the city, it's an opportunity that we could look at doing things differently downtown, and even in the Council Copeland's ward, in the farms downtown. A lot of different ways we can do things, and to me, it's a silver lining.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Thank you. Councilor Rotundo?
Madam Vice President, I just wanted, Darlene did actually just say it. I had sat on a call Tuesday morning, actually it was last Thursday, I'm sorry, in regards to what you were speaking of as investigating, that you have partnered up, I believe Denise DeChamps was on the call from the Economic Development Department. And those were some of the things they discussed. It wasn't necessarily just restaurants. It was actually all downtown businesses, both on Rantoul and Cabot Street, different ways of the landscape. But one thing I will say right now currently is a lot of the restaurants, even though the outdoor dining has been created for extending, it hasn't really been, there hasn't seemed to be as much of a call for it right now. But who knows how it's going to change. It's interesting how things are post-pandemic sort of, and how people's habits have changed. But just to speak to what you were saying, is that there is some topics, and I know Darlene has her head and hands on many different things, but the department's well aware. So just want to put my 2 cents in.
Thank you, Councilor. And I know in Ward 2, which hosts a lot of the outdoor dining opportunity, that we've had a variety. We've had some comments and concerns about noise, and also I've received a lot of people who are really happy with the outdoor dining. So there's been a real range of comments, and yeah, I think overall there's opportunity here. So is there anything else you'd like to share with us about this?
Well, one point I wanted to be clear, because this has come up as a question. So now that capacity limits are lifted inside the restaurants cannot exceed their indoor capacity with their outdoor dining and indoor dining combined. But a lot of the restaurants have reduced their seating inside and/or have service issues that are either making it harder to have any, they know that they can't have more tables than they were previously allowed. So it just allows them to spread people out a little bit more, and some people like the outdoor dining and really want to take advantage of that opportunity. So.
Right. And I have a question about that. Is that based on state building code?
It's the state plumbing code.
Okay.
So you can have a certain number, you need to have a toilet for every certain number of seats.
Would, if we wanted to know more information about that, is that just go through Mr. Frederickson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm curious about how if those laws are old laws, are they new, I just want to learn more. I've had some restaurant owners talk to me about that as a challenge, that they can have more seats outside, but their capacity doesn't increase, and so actually it's sort of a catch-22
Yep.
for opportunity-wise. So we'll refer this to the Committee on Legal Affairs and take it up at our next special city council meeting, which we do not have scheduled yet. Good? Okay, thank you. Okay, order number 137, please.
Okay. This one has the same cover letter, so
Okay.
if it's okay to not read that again, since it's the same.
Absolutely.
But I'll read the proposed ordinance. So it's section 192-61, sandwich board signs. E, notwithstanding paragraphs A through D, sandwich board signs may be displayed without a permit issued by the city council, but only upon approval by the municipal inspections and planning departments in accordance with the standards established by the planning department. This paragraph E shall sunset and be no further force in effect as of April 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Likewise, this order will be referred to the Committee on Legal Affairs. Is there anyone who has a question about that at this time? No? Okay, excellent. And order number 138, please. Oh, yeah, you're going to read that still, right? Okay, got it.
Order number 138. Honorable City Council, please approve the change for duplicate order number 130, resolution for Judith Cronin, to order number 135. Sincerely yours, Lisa Kent, City Clerk.
Thank you, and that's just some housekeeping. I would accept a motion to approve order number 138.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion passes. How many are we? 7-0. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Do we need to accept minutes?
We don't have it.
We don't have any. Great question. Thank you for keeping me on my toes. I would accept a motion for a late file from Counselor Houseman, order number 134A.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And please read order number 134A.
Order number 134A. Dear Honorable City Council, in connection with the effort to address rodent infestation issues in the city, please find attached a copy of my request for assistance from the Solicitor's Office on the subject. A first step, in addition to listening to the public view on the matter, is to inventory the city's current policies and then to determine what possible constructive, new, or additional steps can be taken with the administration. I am requesting assistance from the Solicitor's Office with both the inventory and possibly crafting one or more new ordinance provisions. Respectively submitted, Scott Hausman, City Councilor, Ward 4.
Thank you. And we'll refer that letter to the Committee on Legal Services and the Committee on Legal Affairs and Public Services. Okay. I believe that's the end of our agenda. Anyone else have a comment or question?
Yeah, I have a comment. This is the best meeting because you ran such a fine meeting. Balls go till 9 or 10. So. Thank you.
I will take that compliment. Thank you. Okay, then I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, council meeting adjourned.
Oh, you're 5 minutes.
I'm going to bring up a fan. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a meeting of, it's a joint meeting of the Legal Affairs Subcommittee and the Committee on Public Services of the City Council. We're going to, under the open meeting law, open our meeting, formally make a few remarks, talk about what we're doing this evening, and then we'll go from there. So my name is Hausman. I am City Councilor Ward 4. And my colleague, Julie Flowers, Councilor at Large, are the chairs of the two subcommittees that are meeting. So I'm going to first call to order the subcommittee on legal affairs. Councilor Copeland is on legal affairs with me, and call to order the committee of the whole. Councilor Flowers.
Oh, thank you. I also will call to order the subcommittee on public services with Councilors Rotundo and Ames. And the other councilors that you see up here are part of, as Councilor Husman said, the committee of the whole. And so we have also Ward 2 Councilor Estelle Rand and my fellow councilor at large, Tim Flaherty, are here with us as well.
Thank you, Councilor. So this evening's meeting is a fact-finding meeting. Rodent control, or rats, can be an emotional subject. Which can be reflected in the way we talk about some of our experiences, which can be disgusting experiences. But the tenor of the meeting this evening should be one of mutual respect, addressing a challenging problem, even if we really disagree with each other or have differences of opinions on the subject. My own personal research on the subject suggests that there are no easy answers. There's no silver bullet approach to controlling rats. And I do at the outset want to recognize the tremendous challenge that the city's health director, Bill Burke, who's with us this evening, has faced in helping us meet the challenges of this past year with COVID. So I want to honor the work that Mr. Burke and his staff have done these past many months. And as a result of the pandemic, this issue, to agree, has been on the back burner for the health department and fair to say for the city council and city administration because we've been dealing with COVID-19. So Councilor Flowers and I, as we mentioned, have sort of worked out a program for this evening. The public will have an opportunity to speak. And so I'm going to turn over to Councilor Flowers to make a few comments about how we're running the meeting, and then we will each make some brief opening remarks and ask our fellow councilors if they want to make.
You know how to wake you up now.
BevCam does a great job, so no worries. And then we'll make some brief remarks, and then the mayor and his staff are also here, and they'll be making a presentation this evening as well. So, Councilor Flowers.
Thank you. Well, as you can see, this is a well-attended public meeting, and that's always exciting. It's good to have lots of people always in the chamber with us, and good to have people who are here and ready to share some of your experiences about life in our city. And that's what's really important, is hearing your voices. So because we want to make sure that we do get to hear from as many speakers as would like to speak, when we come to the public comment part of the meeting, Councilor Rotundo has agreed to be our timekeeper because we want to make sure that everyone gets time to be heard. So we'll be holding speakers to 3 minutes. Councilor Rotundo will use his phone as the timekeeping device so that we'll all be able to hear it very clearly, so it will be very fair. It won't be that the chairs are cutting anybody off. When you hear the timer, if you're coming to the 3-minute mark, we will not cut you off immediately at that moment, but it will give you a time to wrap up your last thought or sentence. And I will ask, Councilor Houseman and I had both talked about this ourselves, that we and our fellow councilors, if we choose to speak, also try to model that, keep our remarks within a limited time frame out of respect for your time as the public. We want to steward this time well. We want to steward your time well and make sure that we're really being able to hear different experiences that are happening in our city. And so we also will try to model that so that we can really make the best use of our shared time together. So Councilor Houseman, I believe you have...
Yes, and I think, Councilor Fires, you mentioned the sign-up sheet?
Oh, I did. I will just reiterate for those who've just joined us. So as I was mentioning as we were gathering, there is a sign-up sheet here on the table in front of us for those who might like to speak when we open to the public for public comment. If you would like to add your name to that list, then our assistant clerk, Ms. Dixon, will bring that to us when we open that portion of the meeting. Your name and your address for the record would be very helpful. And as I said before, if you aren't sure yet and then you become inspired during the meeting, it won't be too late, but this is very helpful to have a sense as we get started.
Thank you. Yes, and this is a fact-finding hearing or meeting, so we do encourage those of you who have had experiences around this issue to share them with us. So I'll just make, as I said, a few brief remarks. This meeting is for the public to relate to us as city officials, your experiences, excuse me, your experiences with rats in your neighborhoods and downtown, and share your opinions with us about what you think should be done. For city officials, it's an opportunity for all of us to share with you our views as we have them on the subject. For me personally as a city official, the purpose of this meeting is to start a process that I think is frankly overdue, namely formalizing the proper role for city government in addressing rats in our city. Put otherwise, the question really is controlling the population of rats in the city solely or mostly a private matter in which city government has no particular role or is largely passive? I think that's what I've been hearing from my constituents, that they have been mostly left to their own devices when trying to deal with this issue. The flip side is there a more helpful role where city government can take an affirmative step in helping control rat populations and occurrences in the city? I view this as a public health issue, and I think that the city government can and should take a more active role in it. What that role is, I think, is still to be determined. I have some of my own views based upon my own research about what we could do. For example, I do think, as I said, we need to play an active role, but I'm also concerned about the environmental effects of roticide, which can be harmful or fatal to beneficial wildlife and even our pets. Acknowledging that I have more to learn on the subject. Excuse me. I have started working with the city solicitor in trying to craft a proposed ordinance to deal with controlling rat issues in our city. And I'm looking forward to working with my willing colleagues and the administration, hopefully, to develop a program to address the issue. The first step, for me at least, is to do some fact-finding and listen to you, and I hope that that's what which tonight's meeting will be a productive step towards doing. So thank you. Councilor Flowers?
Thank you. And I did want to acknowledge that His Honor the Mayor just joined us. Mayor, it's nice to have you. And also many of the Mayor's department heads are with us this evening. We have Darlene Wynn, the Planning Director, Jocelyn Kersker, Constituent Services, Jesse Dole from the Solicitor's Office, Bill Burke from the Health Department, and Commissioner Mike Collins from Department of Public Services. Am I missing anybody from your staff, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Sorry, I'd have been here. I really apologize. I had a dental emergency, in and out of the chair, feeling good. Just happened in the last hour. We do have a gentleman here from Welfare and Pest Services who also is going to share some of the, kind of best practices and knowledge in the field when you folks are ready.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And glad that your teeth are doing better. So, Councilor Rotundo, I do have some opening remarks, but I'm going to ask you to set the timer to 3 minutes, and I will hold myself to it. And if I'm not wrapped up, I'll wrap up at 3 minutes.
Does this include Councilor Hausman as well?
No, he has to use his own 3 minutes.
When you're ready, I am.
All right. So I just wanted to echo that I'm also grateful for the chance to be here tonight for this joint meeting, and I'm hopeful that we can do a lot of data gathering, hearing from you, the public, and embarking on a shared and creative process that can be effective within our city about an issue that I've heard a great deal about in my 2 terms on the council, which is rats. I also want to thank my co-chair of this shared meeting, Councilor Hausman, for our work in putting this together, and my fellow councilors for their presence here, their caring, and their concern. I also do want to thank, as we just acknowledged, the mayor and members of his administration for being here tonight, because I believe that our work to build a creative, effective mitigation strategy to deal with this issue in our city really requires all of us, and so I'm really grateful that you're here, and I look forward to our work together on this. I have just a few thoughts that I'm going to share, and as I just promised, if Councilor Rotundo's phone goes off, I will wrap up. So I have in my 2 terms on the council heard a lot about this issue. I'm certain that many of my other councilors have as well, and you all are here because you have been dealing a lot with this issue. So what I believe that we are here to do tonight is to listen hard to our residents who are here, those here tonight and those who have reached out to us over the years, who have emailed us, who have sent us their concerns, and then come together to create a sustainable, enforceable, and meaningful rat mitigation strategy for our city. I will note that part of my personal interest in this process is what Councilor Hausman already alluded to himself, but the balance of controlling our rat populations, which I believe is needed, and care of our environment and our ecosystem. And I don't believe those 2 things are mutually exclusive. So from the start of my time on the council, I've been personally interested in researching ideas about how we might impact our rat populations, decrease our rat populations, while also not poisoning and harming our ecosystem, other animals, our pets, prey animals in the ecosystem, and even putting children in danger with use of toxic chemicals like rodenticide. In my view, we can create a sustainable and effective rodent mitigation strategy that does not necessarily make use of poisons, and some communities are already doing this. I can remember in my first ever budget hearings proposing that we pursue the use of dry ice to manage rat populations, having read about several large cities, at that time Boston, New York, and Chicago among them, having had success with that, filling rat burrows with dry ice, which effectively then suffocates them as the ice off gases. But the benefits are that it's very cheap and the impact on other animals, pets, children is low. Since that time, I do note that the EPA changed regulations on the use and handling of dry ice for this purpose, which caused some of these cities to stop that pilot program. But I also note that now that they have better understood the regulations, as of 2020, Boston had resumed use of this practice for rat control in part. I also am interested to read that in some cities, including New York City, there is a method of reduction of rat population over time that is essentially, instead of putting out poison, this is a good sentence to finish on, I guess. It's putting out birth control that effectively reduces the number of litters that any rat can give birth to and reduces populations over time. And I'll just end by saying that I'm also very interested in thinking together about how we can increase use of or attracting some natural prey to our area, more owls, more other birds within our ecosystem, and I think it could be an interesting win-win with our schools, the Audubon, some STEAM learning, and good for our ecosystem. I guess a win-win for everybody but the rats, which is what we're interested in. So I'll stop. Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Well done. At this point, are there other councilors who would like to make any opening remarks before we continue to move on? Councilor Ames.
Thank you. Welcome. It's really good to see all of you. And I think this is an important opportunity for all of us to be together and have a respectful conversation about our experiences. And I can tell you that I have received more emails and calls and worked probably harder on this issue than any other and I have a massive toxic plume caused by variant in about 1/2 of my precinct. So that's saying a lot. I've seen rats. I've had reports of rats on Herrick Street, McKay, Glidden, Lyman, Lenox, Summer Street, Mulberry, West Dane, Prospect, and Chase, just to name a few. And I can just imagine how difficult it is for anyone to have to reach out to the city or to a city councilor like myself and talk about this issue. It's not all that comfortable. So I give you all a lot of kudos for being here tonight and to having this conversation, even when sometimes it's fraught. So I just hope that this actually becomes something bigger for all of us. And I also am hopeful that your voices, because you have skin in the game, are at the table throughout the process. That you can organize further, as you already have started, and that you can choose some leadership to speak to us directly on an ongoing basis. Because I believe that this is a community-wide issue, and that only if we can together create a pathway towards something better, that we will be able to solve this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ames. Councilor Rotundo.
Let me reset the timer, so it's 6 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say a couple of comments. As a restaurant owner, one of my biggest fears is pests. Not necessarily just rats, but mice, anything. We don't want them inside the building where you eat, correct? My job as a restaurant owner is to make sure that my trash is kept properly, that the lid is down. As you can see, there were some of these handouts that were provided to people who came in. Luckily, that was provided to me from the Board of Health when I was first sworn in 2 years ago. And that was in response to several neighbors in the Ryleside area, particularly on the waterfront, who were having issues with rodents, more likely water rats, to the point that one of them I had to go into their house and physically remove it out of there from underneath their sink. Another one had asked me that they were so fearful to go into their basement that I went down in their basement to physically look, but what she had done to remedy that was made sure the property was actually, all the foundation was cracked sealed, that it was repointed, that she had traps baited. It's $300 fee, and I know that from my own experience as well as talking to these neighbors. And I do have another one where it's a habitual issue currently, and it's on a street where it's not too far from my own house, in my own backyard, where I have rats burrowing in, and unfortunately it's a situation where there are pets in the area that I have to be mindful and aware of it. But with the Ashton, with the one street that's in the area, there's a neighbor there who tends to feed the animals. It's almost as if they're Snow White and they have the squirrel sit on and it legitimately has it on there. And by them doing that, what they're doing is actually creating more of a hazard for everyone. It's not fair to the direct neighbor behind them. It's a $300 that they're paying quarterly to make sure that they're not getting into their house. I know that I've spoken with Mr. Burke numerous times, and he has gone to speak to the neighbors, and there's only so much that he can do without, if these people aren't going to follow the order, it's very hard to enforce it. So I just do want you to know that they do listen, the city does hear you, we're hearing you right now. I don't want you to think that we're taking it lightly. I want you to just hear from my own experience as a counselor, as a business owner, and as well as at my own house, that there are things that we as personal responsibility try to keep them from coming into our house or into my business. And I know it's not the answer we want to hear. We want to see what pest management can be done, what can the city do. So that's what we are here, and as Councilor Hausman alluded to, is what's out there right now that would be something that we as a city can do for everyone. Now, that may be on public properties, not necessarily still in your own homes. Those are still things that you have to take your own responsibility for. It's our job to try to mitigate as best as we can on the public ways and stuff like that. And there is a lot of construction that's going on currently as well, which does tend to disrupt, their homes and things of that nature. So I just want to state a few things, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Rand.
Thank you. And many thanks to Councilor Hausman and Councilor Flowers for bringing this, putting this meeting together, gathering us all in one space. to talk about rats. I wanted to just offer that over the years I have also received lots of constituent concerns over rat infestations in different parts of Ward 2. And then I wanted to share that oftentimes, not every time, but often, the rat infestation is often a symptom of a neighbor, a citizen in Beverly, who is having issues with hoarding. So I think, and I know our health director, Mr. Burke, can probably talk a little bit more about that, but I think it's important to keep in our minds that part of the issue is also connected to a citizen who's obviously struggling with a larger issue and needs help. So just something that I always think about when I'm approached to talk about rats, that there may be a bigger neighborhood problem that is actually the rats are the symptom of that problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rand. Councillor Copeland.
All right, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's always great to see the community involved in something that they care about. So I just wanted to say briefly, as far as my experience, I've noticed, I used to live in Ward 3, wonderful Ward 3 before I moved to beautiful Ward 6. I lived there for about 9 or 10 years on Glidden Street, right next to the golf course. The only time that I noticed, we all had all kinds of animals there, hawks and everything, so owls, and it was a beautiful area. Only time I really noticed a big issue with rats was during construction periods. They actually, on McKay, they tore down the old school building and built apartments. And as they were doing that, we had these huge black rats all of a sudden show up. And they would actually eat, like, into the house. So eat into the house, and then they'd be in the backyard, and, you couldn't have the kids play, so they were jumping around like they were our children out there. And it was just a full infestation. So, the way that we got rid of it probably wasn't the best way to get rid of it, but we were able to get them out there and didn't see them again after that. So it was an ongoing thing, but I noticed when it came to construction, that definitely created a huge problem and a huge influx. And even around the city, we see when we disturb natural habitats, we see foxes running around the street and other animals. So we have to be aware, especially during construction periods. I would love to see us put a game plan in place for how we're going to address those things that are naturally going to happen. We had a bunch of friends that lived by the high school, and they were doing some construction there a number of years ago, and they had problems with rats getting into the cars, chewing through the wires and everything else. So the problem's there, it exists. I think it's great that we can come here together to start to discuss it, and from here, hopefully put a game plan in place of what we can do to mitigate these situations. So thank you again for putting this together. Thank you, everyone from the city for being here as well. Thank you to the citizens. It's great to see you all. This is where democracy happens.
Thank you, Councillor Copeland. All right, thank you, councillors. I do want to just reiterate or underscore what Councillor Copeland was just ending with, and also others have mentioned. Just again, a very big thank you to members of the public for coming tonight, giving your time, and to everyone who's reached out to us, emailed us, talked with us about this issue. We are here to help represent you, and it's really important to get to hear your voices. So I want to offer another word of thanks. Your time is valuable, and you've given it to us tonight. Councillor Houseman, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I guess I will just sort of summarize for myself again that for me the issue really is what is the role of city government in this? Is there more we can do? Is there more we should be doing than what we're presently doing now? And that's really what I'm mindful of in trying to understand the issue better and trying to work constructively with the administration and my colleagues on the issue. At this point, His Honor Mayor Cahill is here, and we'd like to invite him to say a few words, and I understand you have a presentation that you'd like to make, and then we will hear from members of the public. Mayor Cahill?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder, well, I will share a very brief overview of what we do, and then, Michael, how long is your presentation?
3-4 hours.
No.
No, it's probably just maybe 10 minutes to get that.
So I'll quickly tell you some of what we already do, and I don't know if you folks want to, if you want to hear some sampling of what's on people's minds and then turn to Michael, or you folks came to share, not just to listen, so what's your preference? You want to hear 15 minutes from us and then get to you folks, or do you want to kind of flip that? I'm just wondering a lot.
Well, in deference to you, giving you an opportunity to speak first, but I think I defer to Councilor Flowers, but I would be fine to hear from members of the public first, maybe then take a break and or continue.
Why don't we do this? Michael, are you good with staying a little bit? But why don't I just tell you some of what we do as a matter of course, and then we'll turn to you folks, and then Michael can share from the perspective of a professional in the field. So anytime a building project goes before planning board, the health department is asked, and the health department recommends for anything that comes for site plan review or special permit before the planning board, they recommend that there be an integrated pest management plan as part of the project. And so that is as a matter of routine, adopted by the planning board as a condition when they approve projects. And we can get more into the details of that if you'd like in a little bit. And then when building permits are applied for, depending on the type of activity, if it's more disruptive, it's a demolition of a home or a building, for example, then the health department counsels or advises the inspectional services department that as a part of that building permit, there must be integrated pest management that goes with it. So that's without getting into too many of the details on it. We can certainly get into those details. I think why don't we turn to the folks who came, and then at some point you folks decide to turn it back and let Michael make his presentation where it seems like it might be most helpful.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Make sense? Okay, thanks.
We have only 4 people who have signed up to actually speak. If you decide on the fly that even if you haven't signed up and you want to speak, you're more than welcome to let us know. So we'll just go through the list. The first person on the list is Steve Miller. If you would, to the podium, just give us your name and address for the record. And Councilor Rotundo will...
After his name is the address, I'll start.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Miller. I live on Ryle Side at 5 Hillcrest Avenue. And just for the record, I did submit video evidence. These rodents are bold, they're persistent, and they do not fear during the day. I've got video that demonstrates that. And so I just want to make a few suggestions, is that perhaps the city needs to have a bold plan for awareness, removing the harborage that these animals like. So it's a door-to-door letter, maybe pamphlet campaign that just raises the awareness to neighbors that this is how you can prevent these rodents from either growing or moving about, eliminating food sources. So I started using steel trash cans because I had holes chewed into my plastic ones. One day I was bringing the trash out, I moved the barrel, and there's 3 rats under my trash can. So it's not so sustainable, but I line the trash cans with plastic bags because you don't want those cans being dented by the people who are emptying the trash into the trash trucks. So you maintain a nice seal with that trash can. And people who aren't aware or cannot keep their yard clean and free of debris, maybe there's a way that the city can help make them aware that they should perhaps keep the yard a bit cleaner. They love their routes. They stick to their routes. It's almost born into them that they need to go from here to there. It doesn't matter why. I had a cherry tree chopped down because that was a food source for them. My neighbor has a mulberry bush, and the mulberries fall on the ground, and I think they might be after those. But it's just so intense. I spent all last summer battling these things. And then this, and you create a solution and they work right around it. It is amazing. They go under the defenses, they go around the defenses. It's just, well, I think everyone, I see nodding heads, so I think that we all experience the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
The second speaker signed up on our list is Heidi Roberts. So Heidi, if you would give us your name and address for the record when you get to the podium.
I'm Heidi Roberts, 14 Putnam Street, and I'm also the president of Friends of Beverly Animals. So I'm a big animal lover. Well, last spring, I had a problem with rats in my house. Not in the house, but outside. So it was really upsetting to me, because I don't believe in cruelly hurting any animal, and so I didn't know what to do. So I was feeding the birds and the squirrels, and everybody was watching out the window, and all of a sudden I saw the rats. So I checked around, and I found a pest control that did humane killing. And what they did, they put black boxes out with a snap trap inside. And they also filled the holes around my foundation. I stopped feeding the birds, and I think the rats moved on. So I like Councilor Flower's idea of no rodents, what do you call those? Pesticides. Yeah, they're terrible. And we have 2 owls now in our neighborhood. I hear them hooting, which is very nice. So I believe in maybe looking into birth control. And I think the rats came when Dodge Street was opened. They opened the sewer in, I think, 2019. And so then the rats came, and my neighbor in back had them first. And so she got a lot of these snap traps. She stopped feeding her birds, and she said she watched them in the winter moving towards my house. So anyways, hopefully we can find a humane solution, because I don't believe in poison at all. I don't believe in glue traps. They're terrible. And we need to be very humane about that. Rats have a right to live too. Everybody has a right to live. You can't just eliminate one species, but you can reduce their numbers. And, you know, we don't have outdoor cats anymore, not too many, although people let them out now, but they were the, you know, natural predators for the rats, and we don't have those. So hopefully the owls will do the job, and like I said, I don't want any poison in Beverly.
Thank you. The next person on the list is Christine DePalma.
Good evening. My name is Christine DePalma, and I live at 27 Chase Street. This is the first time I've ever talked publicly to city officials, and it's on the topic of rats. I'm a homeowner in Ward 3. I've lived here for almost 4 years. I grew up in East Boston, so I'm used to urban areas. I've never seen such a problem there as I do here in downtown Beverly. In a week's time, I see more rats in my neighborhood than I do my human neighbors. I have seen live and dead rats on my property. I have done everything I can to make my property unattractive to these creatures. I can no longer garden or use my yard in fear of the rodents and the possible diseases they carry. I feel like it's a war on the rodents. Every day I'm trying to figure out a new thing to do to deter them from coming to my property. I should probably buy stock in peppermint oil, because I've been trying everything natural as well, because I don't want to poison. I've been spending a lot of time meeting with others to talk about other issues with rodents that they're having on their property, because I feel strongly that we can come together as a community and come up with some ideas and listen to each other and find some creative solutions. I've been horrified to hear the stories. Dozens of burrow holes in people's yards, rodents living under sheds, rodents that have eaten electrical wires in cars, have gone in the firewall insulations of cars, have burrowed into basements of homes. This is not an exaggeration. The poster that is in front of me are photos of all rats that residents have taken in the city of Beverly in the past week. I've called the city. The city seems to put the responsibility on the homeowner when a resident calls. I've learned through education, I've read every article on the web published about rodents in the last 15 years, that the rat issue is far more complex than an individual can manage. This is not an individual problem. I am hoping and requesting that the city can commit to work with residents to understand the concerns, I love fact-finding, and work towards finding some solutions to improve quality of life and to decrease the public health risks. I believe this is an opportunity for the city, for residents, for business owners to come together in dialogue and find those solutions. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
And I do want to say for your first time speaking before city officials, you did a beautiful job, and I'm glad that you were here and hope you'll come back and participate more. The next speaker on our list is Jenna Meyer. Or Mayer, am I saying your last name wrong?
Mayer, thank you.
I'm sorry, Jenna.
That's okay.
Name and address for the record.
234 Lothrop Street, and thank you to Councilman Houseman and Flowers. I've spoken to you both before, and I really appreciate you bringing this together. So just from my experience, my husband and I bought our first home, moved out of the city, moved here last Labor Day. We were so excited to move to this community, and on day one, we were greeted with a rat. Since then, we've had multiple sightings in our home. My car was chewed through, had to pay a lot of money to get it fixed to make it drivable and safe. A lot of my neighbors have had the same problem. Like every single house around me, when I told them, they were like, yep, us too, and not surprised at all. Like some of my other fellow community members who have spoken tonight, I'm also literally in fear of my own yard and my own basement. I moved out of the city to have this space, and I can't even use half of it. It's extremely disappointing. I've also run up a very high bill with Terminex, other companies, like I mentioned, the car. And while, you know, there are no easy solutions, there are solutions out there. This is not, we're not the first community to experience this problem. We know what's worked, we know what doesn't work. We've all spoken about this tonight. I'm not sure why this is even a question of whether the government should get involved. This is a public health issue. It really needs to be prioritized. Again, as some of my other community members mentioned, you know, as homeowners, we're managing the best we can, but we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. There are so many, first of all, there are probably so many people who don't reach out to you, who don't come to these types of meetings. It's embarrassing, in fear of not being able to sell your house again, to be able to come forward. This is, I mean, it's probably way more widespread than what you're even talking about tonight. So yeah, this just really, really needs to be prioritized. We all feel really passionately as a community about this, and looking forward to seeing what the city can do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, I know that I came down to your house very shortly after you moved in when you mentioned this, and one of the things I find particularly interesting about your situation is that it's not urban, it's not construction, it's really more like a waterway, and it's next to a public park, Cove Park. And so, you know, the habitats are diverse, and so the problem is diverse. And so I imagine that the response and solution will need to be diverse as well, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. And I do agree with you. I would like to see the city do more, and hopefully we can work together to figure out what, in addition to what we've already been doing, that we can do. So thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. Final call, I guess. If anyone else would like to speak, go ahead. And just give us your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Jerry Cahill, 12 Lenox Street, downtown Gloucester Crossing. I've been here 30 years. I'm
sorry, could you lower the microphone just a little bit?
I'm a little shorter, huh? Okay. I've been here about 30 years. Never had a problem when we first moved in. I walked around my neighborhood with many of the people sitting up there. Never had an issue with being afraid to walk around my neighborhood. My husband now takes the dogs out after dusk because I'm afraid of what I'll encounter in my backyard. We called an exterminator about a year ago, and he went all the way through my house. We did have a squirrel once about 15 years ago in my attic that since has been taken care of, but they found rat droppings and rat holes all over the backyard. We talked about a plan to take care of them, and they were talking somewhere in the vicinity of about $1,500 to do my backyard. And so the question that it posed was, if I take care of mine, what about my neighbor who's roughly 20 feet to my left on one side and 30 feet to my right on the other side? And I know he was trying to be funny, but he said, we'll just give them a business card and they can call us too. All right, so at that point, we chose to try a lot of different options. We got rid of some of the stuff we had in our yard. I don't know, $200 worth of trash cans later. A cat that unfortunately got hit by a car, so none of that worked. Now we're to the point where we just sort of have resigned ourselves to that's how we're going to live in our neighborhood. I was reading how it says trap them. Today I went to Home Depot and I bought a have a heart trap, which is not on your list, and I'm sure we're not designed to have a heart with rats. I don't want to kill anything, but when I can sit in my backyard and watch one sit on the stone wall beside me and isn't afraid of me at all, I don't know what we do anymore. And if I go home and there's a rat in my have a heart trap, I don't even know what I'm going to do with it. So I just want you to know, it's been a big issue. The more construction, the more rats we see. I love that Beverly is growing in some directions, but we need to make sure that the people that are here can stay here and live healthy and happy in their own little space without having to share it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, and what was your address again?
12 Lennox Street.
Thank you. Yes.
Upul Rick Marciano, 141 McKay Street. Great speakers tonight. And the man that spoke a little earlier about sending flyers out or something to make everybody aware of what to do, that's huge there. I caught a rat in a have a heart trap also. I brought him down by Wenham Lake, opened the trap up, he jumped out, ran right back underneath my car. So I might have brought him home. I parked the car out the street. But this year here, for some reason, the rats is very, very bad. I've never seen them this bad. When they broke the new middle school, when they did that one, rats first started. McKay School, as Councilor Copeland was talking about, that was an issue there also. But again, this year, they're just real bad. I think citizens, they're just asking for safe, effective methods or remedies. And what the government can do is, once we come up with some of these remedies, the city can buy the products that are safe and that work well. They can buy them in bulk, and then the citizens can buy at a lower cost, and we can purchase those. That's the only thing I can think of right now, short term. But that will help some of the citizens out versus going out and buying the stuff at their own cost. It's very up there. So if there's some way the city can purchase those items in bulk, try to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Oh, I'm really short. Kim Smith, 19 West Dane Street. I suppose I really just have a couple questions. The mayor had spoken of plans that were put in place for construction every time a building is built. Is that something that's available to the public to review? It is, okay. The reason I ask, so like I said, I live on West Dane Street. A building was recently constructed at number 5 West Dane. Prior to that, I moved in 6 years ago. Prior to that, we had seen a rat here and there. So just for reference, the building is behind, it's now the Indo. It used to be a garage of some sort, which had been abandoned. So next to this abandoned building, you had a delightful dumpster. So they'd scurry over, they'd eat at the dumpster, and then they'd scurry home to their abandoned building. Well, now that abandoned building is gone, dumpster is still there. They have nowhere to go. Now they're all over the street. Christine had spoke. She lives very close to me. So now we're really seeing this increase. So I suppose my concern is, these plans are in place, are they actually being followed? Because if they were, would we be seeing the increase? So I'd just love to find out where I can get those plans and take a peek at them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Anyone else who would like to speak?
Yes. Councilor Husband.
Hi, I'm Rachel Tolan, 14 Chase Street. We moved in 2015. We would see the occasional rat as well And I honestly can't even really remember a sighting until the construction came up on Dane Street. So we had the same experience. And then our backyard backs up into the condo building that's on Rantoul with a few restaurants in the back, right? So there's an alleyway in between our backyard where that condo building parks and before Rantoul Street. And there's a number of dumpsters in the alleyway. So when COVID hit, all of the dumpsters were cleaned out 3 times over, and that my experience was all of a sudden the convenience of the dumpsters was now in my backyard, my neighbors' backyards. Luckily, my 2 side neighbors are here. But, you know, that's when I saw a huge increase. So, you know, I'm certainly not suggesting we should go dirty the dumpsters again to get them out of our backyards. But, you know, there is, I think, a sort of long-term cleanliness issue around the dumpsters that has now created an out-pushing, that if those things were kind of able to be tended to more frequently like they were in COVID, you know, once we kind of get out of this influx, I think it might help in the long term. That was my thought. We did put bait boxes in our yard, and we did use poison. I have 2 little kids. I didn't want to kill a thing. I got to a place where I walked out in my backyard and I'm seeing rat droppings, and I have a 1-year-old who like puts everything in her mouth. And so I was working from home alone with 2 children in COVID, and I'm like, get a box. So, but I would love this, the exterminator that was mentioned by this woman here, I'm not sure. Yeah, I would love the name. I would happily, I don't want to kill anything either. I didn't want to put any box out in the first place, so I would love a name to be able to switch when you have a chance after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Joan Matten, and I was born in Beverly, so I've been here from day one. I live at 26 Chase Street, around near Christine and some other neighbors here. In 58 years, and I lived next door to the former Columbus Bakery, bread, flour, etc. Never had this rat problem until April. Big holes dug in my yard. So I called an exterminator. Maybe I did the wrong thing, I'm killing rats. But the price of $790. So to me, that's like another addition on my taxes. But I live next door to a 5-decker. We had a slum landlord taking care of the property, or owning the property, but my new owner here came along about 3 weeks ago, cleaned the yard, took out old barrels. He did some very simple, inexpensive things. Put in new barrels with covers, recycling barrels, because there was a lot of rubbish and food in sight. And when I had the exterminator came, he told me, if those rats have food, they're not going into the traps. So I was kind of a little disappointed. So the next issue, dumpsters. Behind Crispy's Liquors, there's a dumpster that goes with, I can't think of the address, but the big tan building. And that dumpster, overflowing, you want to see a mess, rubbish all over the place. So I called the health inspector's office quite a few times, and I sent pictures. Then I finally called Jocelyn, who has been a tremendous help, and Stacy Ames. So that problem has been solved because there was pressure put on the owners. Saturday, a new, larger dumpster was delivered. So hopefully we won't have an overflowing dumpster. But it was a mess. And when it overflowed, people would come out of that 4-floor apartment and throw the rubbish bags all over around the dumpster. I sent pictures to Stacy and the health, Mr. Goodwin, and Jocelyn. And I started in April with the complaint. Jocelyn and Stacy got the ball going. Now, they're saying construction, maybe it is construction, but way back, and Mike might remember this, in my neighborhood, we had flooding, and about 20 years ago, Miss Scanlon came in, they dug up Chase Street. When I say they dug it up, they put new pipes to get the water down to Innocenti Park to the pump. So I don't think, it could be construction, but it's got a lot to do with how you get rid of your rubbish. You know, a rubbish barrel, the cover. Don't throw loose food all over the place. And I do have a neighbor with a bird feeder, but, you know, maybe when she sees rats over there, she'll do something about it. And I just want to say this last thing. On the corner of Rantoul and Pond, where Super Chicken was, there were barrels there that go with the apartment. I think that's another slum landlord. And he doesn't live in this part of the city. He lives in a better part of the city. Good luck to him. But those barrels are out there 24/7. Someone told me there's an ordinance that you can't keep your barrels out on the sidewalk. And rubbish overflowing every day of the week go by there. It's a disgrace. It's been going on for years. So that doesn't help if you have food for the rats. And like my neighbor said, behind her house, it's the old Crosby block that I call it. And there's all kinds of dumpsters. I don't know what kind of inspection goes on there. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do, if I may, Councilor
Yes,
Houseman,
please, go ahead.
I do just want to say, I feel like several speakers have come up and you apologetically referenced what you chose to do so far to try to address the rats. And I just want to say that my sort of aspirational sense of what we could do together as a city and about avoiding poison was not to indict anybody for what they've already done. And I just want to clarify that. I think, as many of you have touched on, when homeowners are trying to figure out what to do, you're touching on just a little piece of it that someone made that comment, and I think that's really true. So I just want to say, I guess I also will say, in my day job, I work at First Baptist Church, so anyone feeling guilt right now about what you chose to do about your rats, I'll just absolve you. But those were my opening thoughts were sort of my aspirational hopes of where we could go as a community, not what I think you should have already done. I understand and hear everyone's been trying to do the best that you can to manage this problem. So I just wanted to clarify that, lest anybody was feeling guilt.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank you.
Flowers. Is there anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Danielle Spang, and I'm at 16 Mulberry Street. I'm in the same area that people have been talking about. We've been here for 4 years, and our rat problem started when the building next to us, which was on Arthur Street, was completely gutted and renovated. And we know there was a hoarding issue in that building, but the rats haven't. We pay exterminators on a regular basis, and they're just not going away. So it seems like they came out of that building and into the neighborhood, and they're here to stay. We do also have trash issues on our block, where on trash day, if people don't have the trash sealed in bags, it kind of flies down the street, and a lot of it ends up on our sidewalk. So we do what we can to take care of that, but it's just another issue that I wanted to flag. And I know, I wasn't sure if the city was going to put in trash barrels downtown again when the construction is over. I thought there'd been some talk about that somewhere with the downtown plan, to have like the compactable trash cans that are solar powered, but I wanted to re-emphasize that I'm pro anything that can get trash off the streets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Mayor Kale, I think that's your cue.
I'll introduce Michael in just a minute, but I want to say thank you to everybody who's here tonight. For those of you who've just spoken and those who haven't yet, or maybe have in other venues, and I know several of you have reached out to us. I know obviously the councilors care deeply. We do as well. We've been wrestling with this for, for years in terms of what's the right approach. So if anybody wants to, before you leave, please make sure, Jocelyn, just raise your hand if you would. Jocelyn works in the mayor's office as our constituent services director. I'm Mike, I'm your mayor. So if you want to talk with either of us, I know the councilors feel the same way. When this meeting breaks, before you go, please take that opportunity. We want to be connected with you all. Who asked about 5 West Dane? So we can certainly give you the letter that went to the planning board that was part of the conditions. We can also talk with you about the follow-up, what did happen, what didn't happen. And so happy to have that conversation with you afterwards. What else did I want to touch on? When I said that there are, I talked about the health department and different building projects. I also want to add that, we keep revisiting what we do require and what thresholds are the right thresholds for different kinds of activity to require somebody to put a pest management program together and to do work, for example, before demolition. They should get the plan in place, they should bait and trap, and that should take place 14 days before demolition. We as the city demolished a building at 11 Charles Street after several years of being challenged with that as a problem property, and we made sure that we took that step before the demo. Kind of learning from past experiences. More recently, and for those of you who have had problems on West Dane, on Mulberry, on Chase, there's always a challenge for us to, when you look at causality. We know that food sources and harborage opportunities and water, they all matter. And so, when somebody points to a building project going on at a whether it be a home being torn down and rebuilt or commercial property, or when somebody looks at work in the road, it's hard to really determine whether there's any causality or not. So that's enough out of me right now. Michael Becker is the head of Waltham Pest Services. Commissioner Collins, our DPS commissioner, knows Michael, has worked with him, and so asked him to come speak with us. And after talking with him, we asked him to come share his thoughts with you as somebody who's an expert in this field. So, Michael, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Again, Mike Becker with Waltham Pest Services. I'm a licensed applicator in the state of Massachusetts, which means I get to go out and deal with these things on a daily basis. Just want to start by saying that from everything I heard everybody here talking about tonight, you guys are 100% correct. It's a very complicated issue. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. And me being an applicator, living in the area, also a huge environmentalist, and the way I look at it is there's no bad animals. These are just animals that are in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong things, interacting with man. So the question always becomes is, okay, what can we do, both as, as a city, as citizens here, renters, whoever, what can we do to eliminate or lower this problem? Because rats, mice, they've been here forever. They're going to be here a lot longer. Hate to break the bad news to you, but they're not going anywhere. What we want to do is we want to make it a manageable situation. And that's going to come through things like, people were talking tonight, you want to limit food sources. You want to keep trash in proper fitting trash receptacles that aren't gnawed through by the animals. You want to be able to have dumpsters in the area that aren't overflowing, where the rodents can get to things easily. It's all tied together. So we'll just kind of start off. I just want to give you a little bit of a kind of a breakdown of how the rats work, and I apologize, my glasses broke today, so I can see part of the screen. So I don't know if there's any place I can, even better, okay. I have my back to everybody, but okay. So why is pest control important? Well, again, we want to proactively prevent the issues. We want to reduce damaged goods and foods, and that comes more on the commercial side. Places that warehouse food, prepare foods, they certainly don't want to lose profits. We want to protect the structures in our buildings. Rats are notorious chewers. They're teeth are constantly growing. So when people are talking about they're finding, they're chewing through the side of my wall, they're chewing my car wires, rats constantly have to be chewing in order for them to be able to continue eating. So they're very destructive that way. And we want to prevent disease transmission, and that's really what I know what the Board of Health is looking at, is anytime you have rodents and man coming together, you're going to have disease issues. So we're not going to be able to eliminate every rat, every mouse that's out there, but again, how do we keep the population manageable? And, I'm all for, they can go do their rat thing in their rat areas. If we want to see them down in marshes, you want to see them over by, wetlands, all the power to them. But it's where you have them coming into where we're living, where we're working, where we're producing food is the issue. Okay, so through integrated pest management, or you may hear people talking about IPM, what that really means is working to get the pest control issue, the pest problem under control with the least amount of pesticides. Because even being a licensed applicator, we don't like to kill things we don't have to kill, and we certainly don't want to put any pesticides out into the public that just aren't absolutely necessary. So we do this by combining biological, cultural, physical, and chemical tools in a way that minimizes, impact to the economy, to health, and to environmental risks. Okay. The predominant species that we're dealing with around here are Norway rats. These are the ones, I always get people saying, oh, we saw a rat and it was this big. Well, maybe full grown, it's about that big, but it's certainly big enough. They're very smart animals. Very smart. I know there was a gentleman I think you were talking about, you chop down the tree, you put things in their way. Think of it, a rat is going to be about almost as intelligent as a dog. You can train them. They're great at tricks, and they're actually, the domesticated ones make great pets. So I am told. I've never kept one myself. So we're dealing primarily with Norway rats. We do have some roof rats in the area. Rats they're capable of mating and propagating almost on a monthly basis. They'll have about 10 litters a year. Each litter, you're looking anywhere from around 6 to 12 pups. Typically, again, rats, they've been doing this a long time. They're pretty smart. It'll be split between male and female. In about 30 days, those pups are able to reproduce. So you can see how quickly a rat population can get out of control. Okay? Okay, again, we were talking about several rat species. With Norway rats, all they need is about an ounce of food a day. Now, one thing that makes rats different than mice will predominantly get their water supply from the food they eat. Rats want to have water near them, okay? So if you are in an area that either there's standing water, you're near a marsh, you're near water, some source of water. It could even be a broken pipe on the side of a building or a broken faucet that just doesn't shut completely. That will be enough water to attract the rats to your area. So we're talking about, on average, around 30 to 180 droppings produced per day. This probably gets a little bit more than people want. Rats are very cautious. They like order. They like the way things are. The way things are. If they go right, left, rat to go right, left, right to go to their food source every day, that's how they know how to go. Sometimes, you would think that they're curious that they would eat anything that you put out for them. They won't. I've had to experiment and give them different food sources, trying to get them to go to traps. It can be very, very difficult. They are creatures of habit. Okay? Absolutely.
So if the water
Mm-hmm. Not really. No, it's more of if the water is there. Now they may be attracted if you're growing a vegetable garden. They may be attracted to that. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, but that type of water is typically not going to stay on the ground for them long enough to really drink from. Okay. They're creatures of habit. And they're very smart. Again, think of it as kind of a puppy with a long tail. Typically, rats will travel no more than 100 to 150 feet from their nest area. And again, there are things that we can do because, again, to eliminate or to reduce rats in your area, you need to try to reduce as much as the food source as you can, both from a residential side as well as a commercial side. again, we're talking about water sources. They like to burrow in soft earth. They don't want to go through hard clay or rocky surface. So if we're having raised flower beds, sometimes that will attract rats. It's unfortunate. We need to find the balance, kind of strike that balance between doing what we want. We all want to be able to have, bird feeders and beautiful flower gardens and vegetable gardens if we want to do that, but we also don't want to make it conducive to attracting rats. So we got to somehow find that happy medium. Okay, next slide. So again, rodent ranges, we're talking they'll travel anywhere from about 100 to 150 feet. Younger ones, maybe a little bit further. They're think of them as the teenagers. They're the ones that are going to get caught in a trap first. They're more adventurous. They haven't learned the ways of the world yet. Okay. And just to give you an idea, so like a 1 ounce chip bag, that would be enough for a rat per day. Okay. Things to look for to see if there's rat activity in your area. Of course, you're going to notice rat burrows. Also take a look for gnaw marks. Again, rats always have to be chewing on something. So a lot of times if I'm walking through a neighborhood looking to see where there may be rat activity going on, I'm going to look at the trash cans. I'm going to see if they're getting gnawed through. There could be droppings. I don't know if, hopefully everybody's already eaten. But, rat droppings, kind of the way to tell the difference between mice and rats. Mice droppings are going to look like maybe Jimmy's for your ice cream. Rat droppings are going to look like big Tic Tacs. Okay. And if you're in a store owners may look for damaged goods. They're going to break into bags of flour, rice, nuts, whatever. Okay, next. Different ways to control them. Again, there's different traps, different baits. I get asked a lot about, people wanting to be green, so they don't want to use rodenticides or typical certain classes of rodenticides, and then they want to use something called, like a natural bait. Not getting into peppermint oil and things like that, but the problem with a lot of the natural baits is they're poisonous to the animal if they eat it, but they're also poisonous to other animals, dogs, cats, children, and there's no antidote. If I use a typical rodenticide, vitamin D is going to be an antidote for that. Okay, so just because something is natural doesn't make it necessarily better. Just remember that arsenic is a natural killer. So one of the things you want to do to protect your home too is take a look for access points. Okay. And to give you an idea, all they need, a mouse would need about a 1/4 inch hole to get through. As long as they can get the front of their face in, they can chew the hole big enough to get through. So 1/4 inch, if you can put the tip of your pinky into the hole, that's big enough for a mouse. Your thumb would be big enough for a rat. So seal what you can. Seal around your sills, seal around any pipe entrances going into the home. Okay, next. If we're going to be using snap traps, we do what's called pre-baiting. Again, the rats are very smart, very much creatures of habit. Sometimes I actually have to get them to feed before I would set the trap. Okay, next. Different types of bait stations you'll see out there. Some are camouflaged as rocks because we all own nice homes and don't want to have things that kind of scream bait station, so there's different things available. Again, the rodenticides that we use or an exterminator would use, it's going to go into a tamper-proof bait station. So that means, your dogs, cats, kids won't be getting into it. And everything needs to be labeled properly so that if an animal did ingest it, the correct antidote can be given. One thing that we're hearing a lot about, and I'm sure this may even answer your question, is what about secondary poisoning? Okay, which means if that rat or if that mouse eats the rodenticide, and then later on another animal eats that, what's going to happen? Secondary poisoning is extremely rare because for that poison to kill that rodent in the first place, they've metabolized it. And now when the other animal eats that rodent, they're not going to be getting the effect unless they sat down and ate tons and tons of these rodents that had metabolized the bait. Did that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Yes. Yep. Yes, but that's what we're talking about. Those instances, they do happen. They are very rare, but that's why we're talking about this. That would be considered secondary poisoning. So you do hear about that, and I think there was a instance of maybe a bald eagle in the Newton area. I heard about that a couple of months ago, but unfortunately it does happen again. I'm an environmentalist as well, but we got to look at it and say, okay, what is the risk reward? We're trying to keep, rodents, which definitely have a detriment to our health, out of our areas. So we got to kind of balance that. Right. I mean, again, being an environmentalist, I don't want to see it either. But again, we have to kind of weigh things out. I mean, there are different things like you were talking about, snap traps before. Yep, snap traps will work faster. But it has to be the right thing for the right application. Yep. Yes. Bald eagles, foxes, whatever's going to eat that rodent that died from the poison. Not as much. Not as much. Again, it can happen. It does happen, but the instances are very rare on the secondary poisoning. But it's something to be concerned about. Any other questions?
Could I just ask if members of the public ask you a question, is it possible for you just to repeat it into the microphone?
Mic? Sure.
Just for folks watching on BevCam.
As long as I can remember it, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, was that it for the slides? I think. And then if there's burrows, exterminators, we can treat the burrows. I know people were talking about rat ice, or that's the dry ice pellets that go in. There's other devices that we use as well that just basically create carbon monoxide, and we pump it directly down into the burrows, and it's more humane. They go to sleep. But there's different things. Oh, that's our burrows RX machine. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. So really, again, what you want to do is you want to seal up holes. You want to report activity. I think that's one thing that's key about the meeting tonight is the communication. If you see dumpsters that are overflowing somewhere, communicate it to the right people. Probably to the Board of Health. We're all kind of in this together. Everybody wants the same thing, from the city council to the citizens here in Beverly, to even the exterminators. We're all just trying to make it a place that we can live healthy with kind of minimal impact on the rodents as well. Yes.
So my comment is regarding national
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, maybe
I'm sorry.
Maybe you could go to the microphone. Thank you.
So my comment is relating to natural deterrents, and my wife did some research about lavender and spearmint, and they seem to go around the plants. There was a hole right next to one of the plants. So is that really effective?
We get asked that a lot. Between it could be natural deterrents like lavender, spearmint, peppermint, mothballs, some of the sonic machines. And what I've found, again, there's no real scientific evidence that says yes, that works. I always say try it. The worst it's going to do is make it smell nice. But there's nothing. Even some of the sonic devices. Sometimes what I hear is that it will help maybe for a week, but after they get used to it, it's not a big deal. So because again, being a feeder of birds, I had squirrels that were attacking everything that I put out there. They told me to change the seed. I did that. That worked for about a week. Then they said, oh, well, you can put this hot oil and you mix it. And I got to wear gloves up to here because it'll burn the skin off you. But the squirrels, after about a week or two, figured that, caliente wasn't so bad, and they kind of liked it. So things will adapt. Okay. So again, talking about trash and recycling, people want to have their trash in the proper containers, both on the residential side as well as commercial. You want to keep it away from the entryways, your homes. You want to, again, keep it about 100, 150 feet away so that it's not attracting it right up to your foundation. Dumpsters, they don't want to be overflowing, and the lids need to fit properly. Okay, this is something I actually see a lot with the concrete blocks. When people build those block walls, they're creating a really nice habit trail for the rodents. They love these things. So in a lot of instances, that you can get a capstone, put that on top, and now you've sealed them out. Okay. Okay, and we'll go back to questions. Yes. Okay, the question is, have I researched what they do in European cities? No, but I am willing to go over and travel and see, yes. Yeah. 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 Right. The whole thing's going to come down. It takes a village. It's a multi-pronged, multifaceted approach to getting this thing under control. There's no one magic pill. I tell people my magic flute broke a long time ago. You know, it's doing exclusion around your home. It's getting rid of harborage areas. So because harborage is a fancy word for junk. If there's stuff in the yard, there could be junk cars. It could be a pile of bricks. It's giving kind of safety to a lot of the birds of prey that are going to prey on these rodents. And if they feel safe that they can move around without being seen, it's going to attract them to the area. I'm sorry, what about us? Sulfur bombs? Yeah, I was going to say, I remember that. Not really seeing that for use with that. I don't know if that's something that the EPA had blocked. But there are the methods like we were talking about, the rat ice product and then the Burroughs RX. There's also pelleted rodenticides, which can go down into the burrows and be used.
I think we have some counselors who have some questions as well. Councilor Ames first, and then Councilor
Thank you.
Rotunda.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for your presentation. Just from the people out here, who lives between Cabot and Rantoul? So many in my ward. So what I would like to understand, I can appreciate the personal responsibility part of this, but I think the impact in this neighborhood, whether, no pointing fingers or not understanding where it came from, the past is the past, but I think that from my perspective, we as city government owe it to these folks who are having extreme impacts. I mean, we're talking, I have an email from somebody with rats hanging from her pear tree. I mean, people who can't use their yards, people who are in fear, who have severe anxiety. And so what I was wondering is if you could work with the city to help us as a community work to remedy, even as a test, these neighborhoods, because they're neighborhoods full of people who care very much for each other, and I think that they are affected by often impacts beyond their control. There are homes that have holes in roofs and, that really are often condemnable, that the city needs to help them with, because there's nothing they can do on their property for that.
Yeah, we're more than...
So if we could work together to, as a community, to work at this, I think there would be a greater sense of success or pathway to making this a better situation for them.
Absolutely. We work closely with places like the city of Medford, where we'll walk through, areas, we'll walk through communities, looking for areas, or if something gets reported that, gee, they're seeing more, increased rat activity there, we'll walk with one of the Board of Health officials, looking for some of the issues, and that way they can address it with either the homeowner or the business.
The businesses and maybe the Board of Health and the building inspectors can also follow up with more enforcement to make sure that their efforts are fruitful and go in the right direction. Is that something, Mr. Mayor, that you think that we could work with together?
I'm happy to get up. I have a few thoughts on what we do right now.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't we have Councilor Rotundo's question?
Councilor Rotunda.
And then we'll go to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. Question is, in your experience with the pest management, and right now with a lot of composting going on, I know we have a program in place with the hard containers, which will keep them contained, compost, but some of the, some yards in my neighborhood, they use compost in their backyard, they have it there, they throw their scraps there, which obviously attracts it. Are you finding that where composting is becoming more popular, that maybe that might be a reason why we're seeing a higher increase of pests within the neighborhoods, just not necessarily even Beverly, but just in general. It just seems
it can. I don't know if that's one of the main reasons we're seeing an increase, but I have gone into, when I'm doing some of the neighborhood walks, gone into yards that were complaining that they did have rat activity going on that had composting that was attracting the rodents. It's finding that balance. I mean, we all want to be able to compost and have gardens and do the things that we enjoy doing, but without, kind of walking that line without necessarily inviting the rodents into our neighborhoods. Yeah.
I want to briefly follow up on the comment about composting. So composting is great. I compost, but not everyone knows how to compost properly. So composting with basically vegetable matter, not meat, is something very fundamental to composting if you're doing it properly. So question, would the ingredients in a composting pile make a difference? So for example, to a Norway rat, if you had meat products in it, would it make any kind of distinguishing difference to a rat as opposed to vegetable
versus just vegetables? I don't think so. I mean, they're pretty much omnivorous. I've gone into bait stations that we have out in different areas, like let's say the produce area, and you can see all the stuff that they pull in. I mean, they'll pull in. They're eating better than we do most of the time, but they're eating fresh fruits, vegetables, everything.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Other councilors, questions? Yes, Councilor Copeland.
All right. Well, Mike, it's great to see you again.
Likewise.
We know each other from the Middleton days, so
Yes.
wonderful to see you here. My question is, I talked before about the new development and everything else. So, I know there's no direct correlation that we found or that we've studied from something being torn down, something being rebuilt, and, rodents coming. But from a common sense perspective, if you haven't seen it before, and then this new thing happens, and now all of a sudden you see all this new, infestation, there might be some sort of correlation. So is there some sort of plan or insight that you can have for new developments, things that they might be able to do to maybe head that off a little bit?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's probably a lot of that already in place, where anytime that you're having new construction, any demolition going on, that they in order to get the, I guess the site permit, I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but probably getting the site permit or whatever it is, that they need to submit a rodent control plan, that they have something in place with a professional.
And is there anything that you recommend? They have their plans in place, but it still seems to get out into the community. So is there anything that you'd recommend for the community, since this is happening and we know this could be an issue? There's something more that they can do to help head that off as well?
Tough to put something in place preemptively, but if situations like that would arise, we would have to go into the community and see what, is it something that's due to the construction or demolition, or is there something else going on in that area that's attracting the rodents in?
Okay.
So we'd have to kind of look at it on a almost like a case-by-case basis.
So then basically going back to some of the things that you were saying there, if there's new construction, they have a plan in place, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as individuals, you want to do some of the things that you talked about already, as far as making sure that you don't have those open things that would encourage those rodents to come to your property.
Right. And it is tough, too, because you can have somebody, as we were talking about before, you have somebody that's doing all the right things in their space, but if something's going on next to them that is not kosher, then it could end up attracting the rodents, and the rodents, they don't necessarily look at the fence as a fence. They're just going to, march right through the yard or be attracted into that person's area. So really, you need to take a multifaceted approach and kind of take a look at that space.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
That is amazing. Without strong measures, you're not going to get that.
It can be tough. I mean, the natural predators will take a lot out. We've actually worked with, or we're working with and testing some of the new contraceptive products that are coming to market. I've got some that I'm testing out with a client right now. It's just a matter of trying to entice the rats to eat it. So But there's different things, because again, we're always looking for better ways. If there's a way to control the population without necessarily doing anything unnecessarily cruel, the exterminators do want to do that. Yes.
And could you repeat the question?
Right. So the question was how if their food source or their home was destroyed, how far are they going to travel to kind of set up shop again? It depends. Probably the food source or the shelter that they have, they like that because it was conducive. The ground was good. There was moisture. There was water nearby. So they're probably not going to go much further than they were. I mean, I've had situations where, we're using the burrows RX, and I can see the rats leave the burrow. A lot of times they'll kind of, better terminology, they'll kind of get freaked out. They won't go back to that burrow, but they may end up going something a few hundred feet away. Yeah, probably not even that far, if they can help it. I mean, again, they're creatures of habit. They don't want to travel outside of an area that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, Mr. Miller, one more question, I think, and then maybe we'll ask the mayor to make some comments.
Thank you. Yep. They're still there. They're still doing their things. They'll come out. I know even if we're looking for rat activity in the wintertime, we're going to look for footprints in the snow. We're going to look for what we call tail drags, so you can kind of see where they're moving around. The reproduction will slow down in the winter. So one of the reasons is we typically see more activity, especially in the summer. We're outside more. They're outside more. So, and again, they're reproducing about every 30 days, but they'll have about 10 litters a year. But it's easier for them, so they will reproduce more frequently in the warmer months. Okay.
Thank
you very much.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Mr. and Mrs. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Chairwoman, sorry. I just tried to take a few notes to make sure I covered things. When I was introducing Michael, I tried to say that we've been trying to revisit and reimagine as we go and try to figure out the solutions to some of the things that are being, that people are struggling with, and try to figure out where is there causality that we can reliably conclude or not. We did start requiring that NUCO, who does the gas main work for National Grid, start baiting and trapping when they go into a new section of a street or neighborhood and put a new line in. That's pretty disruptive work. Whether or not that has an impact, whether or not that's a real causation, I haven't figured out yet. But that was a part of the conversation that came from concerns you folks raised, so we're trying that with NUCO. I think a little easier to get them to do that. They will obviously pass that cost along to ratepayers, right? That's what will happen. We have, as a city, we don't necessarily have resources to do some of the things that people might want. And again, there's that causality question. But I do want to say that our health department, the pandemic has had cities and towns all over the world, I think, revisiting what health departments are capable of doing as currently constituted and whether they need to be reimagined and rebuilt. There are a lot of equity issues and concern and health disparities, which are real. This is one that is showing itself here in Beverly more recently. I mean, look, we've been responding to and addressing concerns with rodents as long as I've been mayor, and I'm in my 8th year. And so, it's not something that, just started. It's something that people, struggle with in their own yard, part of a neighborhood at various times. But we did last year get involved twice with homes. And we can't necessarily do that every time, but these were, and I don't want to say unique, but these were very singular instances, right? In one instance, It was a home where the resident passed away. There was a reverse mortgage. It was held by Bank of America. We couldn't get their attention. It was going to take a while for that estate to settle. There was somebody living in the home still, and it became clear that there was harborage in the basement, kind of a basement that was old. It was just kind of jam-packed with stuff. And there were burrows into the foundation. And so because of that, the fact that nobody else could do it, we stepped in. So we did that, and we're still in that, and that's down in the neighborhood that we're talking about, West Dane, Mulberry Chase. We're still doing that. We still have that pest management company and doing that work for the time being, and we're trying to get Bank of America's attention and get them to, take care of their property. We're hoping to recoup that funding from Bank of America eventually, but, so that one's in place. In another neighborhood, we had a house where the Board of Health had to vacate the house a couple of years ago because, sadly, a couple of adult children of parents who passed away, and it was an unhealthy dynamic, and so they had to leave. Floor to ceiling, wall to wall, kind of hoarding going on in there. And because the property was in tax title and the courts weren't open and we couldn't push to get through that, we stepped in again, because that was something that, nobody could control it other than the city. And so in both of those properties, we've been in an ongoing way, month by month, managing that or paying for that pest management. Again, not something that is budgeted or really can be done in most cases. So just as a couple examples, I think back to the idea of what health departments are capable of. We are not at all unusual in Beverly. This is how our health department is structured. 2 full-time inspectors, the health director, and a public health nurse. The pandemic blew open the way people see health departments, and we're all trying to figure out how to move forward, right? We have an additional half-time inspector, so we now have 2.5 instead of 2. The public health nurse, with the health director's help, hired on several temporary nurses. Initially, it was about contact tracing, then it was about testing, now it's about vaccinating and continuing to contact trace. The inspectional piece, the State Department of Health all of a sudden took on all kinds of, like every sector of the economy that closed down and then tried to reopen, it got dumped in the health department's lap locally. So, and some of that's temporary, but some of it gives us a really opportunity to reimagine. And so that we started talking about together, we in the administration council, and we need to keep doing that. And to Councilor Ames' question, absolutely. Some people here reach out initially to me, to the health department, to my office. Some people reach out to you folks directly, immediately. We all want to do right by everybody who we represent. So absolutely, we're feeling our way through it. I spoke with somebody from NUCO recently who was doing a connection to a home. The question came was, what are they doing down here in the street today? Well, they were just doing a connection to a home. Now that's something that happens all the time, right? From the main into a home or a business, and it's a 2 or 3 hours in and out of the street. They're not going to trap and bait for that. Less intrusive, but it happens regularly. And I asked them, started talking about it, and they said, well, in another nearby community, if we do gas main work beyond 100 linear feet, then we have to bait and trap. And so I don't know what, is there causality? And if so, what's the threshold? Is there magic for 101 feet versus 99? So yes, we're already engaged in trying to kind of keep revisiting and trying to strengthen what we do require, where it makes sense to, and let's keep doing that together. And then we are about to kick off a big education effort on recycling. We went and did an audit of our recycling, what goes to so with our trash contract, right? It's trash, it's recycling, right? We went to the recycling facility that JRM owns and runs. And we looked at it, they monthly, they audit. They take a truck full of recycling, they dump it out at the space, and they pick through it, and they look at it. And it was really eye-opening. We had about 6 of us go over and do that with their folks, and it opened our eyes to what we can and what we cannot recycle, and how hard it is today, how hard it has been to know just how to recycle. So we're going to be kicking off a real kind of re-education effort for all of us over the next several months on recycling. And here's a really basic one. One of the things that contaminates recycling stream is when, bottles and cans, can of tomato paste or, you know, some applesauce jar, or whatever. If we don't rinse them out, you know, thoroughly, and then shake them out so that, you know, there's no food left in them, and then try to shake the water out, that becomes problematic for the recycling stream. I think that's also an example where when we think about any kind of pest that we're trying to prevent from finding food and taking up residence near us, I think at the same time on that recycling piece, we've got more work we can do in terms of educating ourselves together. We also are really trying to figure out how to compost more. And the composting pilot that we have in Beverly, I know some of you who are probably part of it, there are about 1,200 households. You know, it's on the one hand, it's a real airtight, you know, hard snap shut container. On the other hand, that, you know, it may not be foolproof, right? And so, you know, we're trying to figure that out. When you look kind of longer term at the role of food waste in greenhouse gases, particularly when food waste breaks down, when it's not actively composted and it breaks down in a landfill, you know, you've got that methane gas. And so we are trying to figure out, can we do a better job of food composting? This is another layer to the whole composting conversation, which we've got to work through together if and as we try to expand on that. I hope that's helpful. I think this is great. Thank you for you know, creating the forum to talk it through some. Please make sure you're connected with all of us. We do want to work through it together. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Mayor, before you walk away from the podium, I know at least Councilor Ames had a question, if that's okay, and then if there's other councilors.
So first off, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing your team. Thanks for cleaning out 2 Ward 3 homes. They were both Ward 3 homes, one in the Lexington area and one in this neighborhood we've been talking about. And really, thanks to all these neighbors who are so dogged and organized and vocal and such, you know, they're great activists in their own behalf. So from here, and I'm glad to hear you talking about the fact that all of this is connected, because it totally is. How we deal with our waste, how we work together, it's all connected. So my hope is that we can find a pathway in which people in this city can buy into how we get from point A to point B. That's, you know, so we can, as Councilor Rand was talking about the trash barrels, we can re-envision our future and how we deal with trash, because that's sort of the goal for all of us. So I think that perhaps working up a plan together would be great. And I think it would be phenomenal to have at least one, if not some of these self-selected folks at the table to be able to bring their point of view, because as I said before, they have a tremendous amount of skin in this game and they have significant challenges. And while they may not be experts in the field, they are certainly, or in government for that matter, they're certainly living this reality and are highly motivated to fix it for themselves and their neighbors.
Agreed, thanks.
Okay, thank you. That would be wonderful.
I just have one other comment, because of your, you got here a little bit late, you missed some of my comments. So I've started working with the city solicitor to try to prepare an ordinance that we might present for council consideration, and I look forward to working with you in the solicitor's office and my colleagues to try to come up with perhaps a more comprehensive, formalized approach in our city ordinances that might help us deal with this. That might not be the solution, but I'm certainly trying to work in that direction to see what opportunities there might be. Our neighborhood cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth and on the North Shore for sure have formalized ordinances around program that deals with this in a way that I don't believe we have on our books. So I look forward to having an opportunity to talk with you about that and working with you and your department heads and the council on that approach as one possible solution.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, I think we've got a lot of work to do together. I do want to say, I don't want to keep anybody in suspense. You may or may not be interested. I stopped over to see my brother's little 3-month-old golden puppy. And when I leaned over to pet him, he got excited and jumped up and he knocked my temporary cap out. So I had to go over and get the thing drilled and put back in. So I apologize for missing the intro. It's kind of silly, but the poor little thing. She was fine, by the way.
Worried about her and not you.
Yeah, exactly. She's a lot cuter.
Well, I'm glad you were able to attend nevertheless. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, all. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
I just had a sort of simple thought.
If you could to the podium, just so that the audience...
I just had a simple thought about, the communication throughout the neighborhoods are so hard. My husband's the recycler in our house. The system's a little complicated. He remembers all the numbers. He goes through it, make sure it's right. He says, I'm a magical recycler. I want to recycle everything. He weeds it out, right? But if the recycle bin and the trash cans literally just had a sticker that you guys came by and stuck on a trash day, that's stuck in my barrel or stuck in my recycle bin with the guidelines or a key about cleanliness and what the key is for recycling, then it's like just in front of you. And I feel like in my world that would be huge. Anything that's easy, the stickers are cheap, it's not a huge trash can system, that's just my thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just if this is helpful, we will be sending some for property owners. This doesn't hit everybody. For property owners, we will be sending an insert out in the next quarter's property, water, and sewer bills. Right. So that's one. Two, the company that we contract with for our trash and recycling pickup is required in the contract to send out 2 mailers a year. We're going to try to make sure that those are coming soon and of the highest quality. So there'll be something you get in your mail that you can, put on the desk or put on the fridge. And then all of that should be, and I know it is somewhere, but we want to make sure it's prominent and easy to see on the city website as well, that same material. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Rand.
Oh.
Thank you. I have a quick question and a comment. My question is what's the best protocol for, just to kind of get back to the what happens when one of our neighbors is hoarding and needs help? What's the recommended pathway to get help for that person? I know that our Council on Aging does a lot of work with our elders around that, but just in general, what does the city kind of recommend for?
I'm going to say if it's one entry point, I'm looking at our team, would we want to push people towards QSend for the first contact? I think that might be the most effective, and then we can work it internally to the different departments.
Mr. Burke.
So as our health
Our
director,
viewing
Mr.
audience at BevCam.
As our health director, Mr. Burke, comes up, let me just say QSend it's a tool that's on our website that you can log in a problem, and it'll get routed to a department right away. And so that should generate an immediate response to you saying, we've got it. This is the department that's working on it. And that's a connection that if we make. The other thing is if you can't easily find it, or if you're not online, you can call my office, and we can take the info and enter it into QSend to get it started. So there are a number of ways that people try to make connection. That may be the most effective way for you. If you want to, it's QSCEND. I want to spell it right.
My Beverly.
Oh, you want to go to My Beverly, and that puts you to QSend. Okay. I can't keep up. So My Beverly is a platform that Jocelyn manages, so that'll get you right into that. It's called a work order system, so the public can say, okay, here's a problem that we see, and then we can get it to the right people and start to work on it. Bill?
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bill Burke. I'm the Public Health Director. Regarding hoarding, I heard the question. I started answering over here. I just wanted to come up and get recorded. Again, another difficult problem. The mayor alluded to, if they're a senior, some good news, senior care and social service agencies sometimes can help plug them into services. The problem we have is the health department, we're an enforcement agency. All we can do is kind of pile on and cause them more problems. Like someone said, what are you going to do? I said, sometimes our only tool in the toolbox is, without a social service agency or family that will intervene, is to condemn the house. And I've seen years, it's sad to say, condemn the house. The 7 cats that lived there saw a vet and were placed in a shelter by dinner time. The woman was homeless for weeks. So again, it's not, not an easy solution. Certainly, we mentioned some of the demolition that occurred at one of these houses, and we did the rodent control. Again, another tough issue. We wanted to make sure we had a safety net under those folks before we pulled the trigger. The good work that the Community Impact Unit of the Police Department does with the embedded mental health clinician has done wonders, not only for situations like this. We can have someone that's trusted, maybe connect them to mental health services, but also with the opioid addiction. I mean, you see another casualty of the pandemic. Opioid rates are through the roof again. We had some pretty good success here in Beverly working with our regional partners. And I don't want to digress, but, the other issue with rodents, too. The state sanitary codes is the property owner's responsible. So we get the complaint. Pretty much our mode of action or the way the law states is cite the property owner. So, we try to work with folks and so forth. So, again, these are some of the dynamics of the way the laws are written, and they're good tools, but again, sometimes those folks aren't aware they have a problem. They have resource limitations. They could be elderly, other health or issues. So again, I think this is a good start to maybe strengthening what we can. And just surmise our role is prevention. We do planning board comments and building permits come to our office for approval. So we look at that, not only rodents, but other quality of life issues. HVAC systems installed, so if we have noise issues in the neighborhood afterwards, dust and during construction, if there's going to be a food establishment, they need to submit plans to us. We do inspect restaurants. That's another task that we have with the rec camps for children, bathing beaches, semi-public swimming pools, rental housing, bag ban ordinances, and everything else part of the restaurant inspection is the premises, the dumpster, the exterior parking lot. Is the building tight? Can insects and rodents get in, get out? So we address some of those concerns. Again, the mayor mentioned we have 2 sanitarians, myself, and a public health nurse. So again, a lot is charged. That's somewhat unique to Massachusetts with its 351 cities and towns. Most of your government and the rest of the country is, on a county scale or larger. So I'll be quiet. I just wanted to answer that one question, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, a couple of questions.
Councilor Rand, did you have a follow-up to that?
I did actually have a follow-up and a comment. So I think they're both comments. The follow-up comment is just that to me, and I know this is somewhat anecdotal, but it seems like this, the majority of the problem we're kind of hearing about right now centered around that neighborhood where there was construction, but actually those 2 homes that were that there was a hoarding issue, and knowing how quickly rats reproduce now, I'm not surprised that they're sort of overcoming the neighborhood. So that's just a comment to follow up on your thoughts. And thank you for sharing that with us.
No, I think we want to be careful. I don't think it's as simple as saying, I have a problem, that's where it came from.
Right. Yeah.
I think, hey, it might contribute. It might have been a factor. It might not have been a factor. But
agreed.
Hey, if a rat's hanging off a tree eating a pear, that wasn't the construction. He's there for the pear.
Right.
So, I think we look at that. I've heard a lot of the residents say, I had them in my house in Salem. I've owned that for 30-something years. First time pre-pandemic. But I said, my neighbor says, hey, Bill, I think he's living under your shed. I said, okay, I'll clean up around the shed, stop feeding the birds on the other side of the fence, and cool it with the bird bath for a month, and we'll see what we can do. Again, no easy, but I've heard a lot of those folks, and I've frustrated rabbits are the other thing now, too, but lavender, the peppermint oil, the human hair, the, dog urine, whatever, fox urine, tried it all, so, but I'm sorry.
And the other comment I wanted to make was just that I'm really thankful and impressed with this particular gathering here today. I feel like I've heard, 3 or 4 really great suggestions for solutions, really positive energy in general, super respectful dialogue, and I think Beverly rises to the challenge all the time, but this was particularly impressive. So I just wanted to share my gratitude and say thank you for being just so solution-oriented and respectful. So thanks.
Thank you. I think Councilor Copeland mentioned that earlier. This is the way it's supposed to work,
I have a question about the rental inspections. Is the college homes that are being used as dorms part of that inspection, or are they, I know they're privately owned and then rented to colleges, or?
If they're true apartments in that sense, they do come under the rental ordinance. If they're dormitories, if they're college owned. Yeah, I'd probably have to look further, to be honest. But oh, okay. Well, regardless of an occupancy permit, trash is trash. So whether it's a dormitory, whether it's a single-family house, whether it's a multifamily house or a business, we can address it. And again, it's part of restaurant inspections. But if something comes up, call us. We investigate. You might have heard that before, but again, call. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Thank you.
I understand that there's one more member of the public who did not get to speak and would like to, so I think in light of the hour, we are going to have this gentleman, if you would come on up, name and address for the record, and then we will close out this time following this public comment. But that doesn't mean that this is the end of our shared conversation. I think as many counselors have alluded to already, and as many of you have alluded to, this is a conversation for all of us to continue to work on together. And Christine, I believe it was you who said specifically, we're doing individual pieces, you all are, but it's not an individual problem. And that's really, I wrote that down, that really sticks with me. And so we'll have this be our last public comment for the evening, but that doesn't mean this is the end of the conversation. So go ahead.
Great, thank you. For the record, I'm Greg Dolan. I live at number 5 Prospect Street. I think overall this is a great, educational experience for, everyone here. I think for the most part, the conversation progressed in I guess, on a path that I think was very helpful. I am a little bit concerned that, we've sort of directed a lot of energy onto, what our neighbors have been doing. I don't have a rat and rodent problem. I control it, for my property, and I own and live in a 3-family, basically right downtown. So I don't blame necessarily, my neighbors for the rats that I've seen in the neighborhood. I do think that the city does need to, be a good neighbor itself. I think we need the support of, the mayor and the city engineer and the Board of Health to make sure that that happens. And there are a lot of things that need to be done that are just for sort of matter of course. I know that earlier tonight, we had heard that the planning board has to sign off on rodent control plans for all building demolition. And that's great, but that's also the minimum standard that's required by state law. The Massachusetts Building Code actually requires that. So it's not that the city's doing anything in addition, it's just that they're actually following the law. And to the councilman's earlier question, is there a correlation to, the sightings of rats or for, the movements of rats in relation to building construction? The relationship is so obvious and so clear that the state government, the state legislature, actually put together like a code, or instructed, the state building commission to put together a code to address that problem. So anytime that there's building demolition in the city of Beverly, we need to make sure that the contractor who's doing that and the building owner who is performing that follows the minimum standards of the state building code, and that the city's holding them to account for doing that. And I think Councilman Houseman's letter is incredibly important to the community, because we need to do more than just the bare minimum. And we do need to have something that goes above and beyond the minimum state building code for local code to require that, things in addition to having a erosion control plan are in place. Because if that's what's being done right now, and we're doing everything as a community that we should be, the minimum state building code just isn't working. And we need to do more. Another point is data collection. I had met with you, Mr. Mayor, I think a year and a half ago, prior to the pandemic, so maybe it was 2 years ago, on data collection. And I think the website will be extremely helpful, but I think it's important that all of us provide data to the Board of Health so that they actually can track where the infestations are occurring, and so that they can actually do their job and go to the homes. And it's not necessarily you who are the problem, obviously. Like, your neighbors need to be made aware that they have a rat infestation, and if that's the Board of Health that has to go in as the neutral mediator, then they should have the data available to know that there have been rat sightings on that person's property, so that they can go and have non-confrontational dialogue with that property owner. And finally, and I know it's COVID related, or at least my assumption has been that it's COVID related, but the elimination of trash barrels from city parks and from Cabot Street. I know that you guys would, I'm sure, like to see those as two separate issues, but they are intrinsically related. So, every one of us, and like, I know a lot of my neighbors who have been walking down the street and picking up trash that is on the street that normally would have been in a garbage can if they were still available out on Cabot Street or out at the city parks. And that, in one sense, is an obligation of the city. You guys are the property owners of the public streets and of the public parks. And the sanitary code requires you, as a property owner, or maybe I'm stretching, I'm not an attorney, but you guys are the property owner. The sanitary code requires that you have trash receptacles for the users of that property. I'm extrapolating perhaps, but certainly prudence would demand that if you are operating that park facility or the city streets, that you should have receptacles available, especially if there's a ongoing rodent problem. Sorry, I did not expect to speak tonight.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Dolan.
you. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. And I just want to repeat, as one of the co-chairs of this meeting, repeat my thanks and acknowledgement of everyone turning out this evening to talk on this issue, to learn more about it. It's really necessary for us as city officials to hear from the public, both individually but also collectively in a meeting like this, where city government is sitting down all at the same time, hearing the same information at the same time from interested parties. So I want to thank you all for showing up tonight, and for those of you who spoke. And as Councilor Flowers said, this is going to be part of an ongoing conversation to try, at least from my perspective, hopefully to craft a more robust city involvement in trying to address these issues. And there's we've heard so many different ideas tonight, a range of different ways to go about doing that. So thank you very much for showing up. With that, I think if councilors have any other questions or comments they want to make, we will, as subcommittees, now go through a formal process of adjournment. to end the meeting. You're all welcome to stay and watch us do that, but certainly you don't feel obligated to stay and watch us go through sort of our formal motions.
Before we adjourn, Councilor Houseman, I just
Yes.
wanted to mention, again, in addition to your words of thanks, and thanks to the councilors who are here tonight, and thanks to the mayor and his team for being here with us, thanks to BevCam, Kim in the booth, for putting us on the air. But I do want to mention, I know Christine mentioned it specifically, but I think several of you have alluded to, I haven't spoken here before, I didn't expect to speak tonight. And I just wanted to say, again, a thanks for that. It can be, I think, a little bit daunting if you've never done it to sort of navigate the process. So I hope now that you've come and you've participated, I hope that we'll get to hear your voices even more often. But just an extra word for those for whom this was your first time at this podium, thank you, because you're such an important part of this public process. And I know for some of us, it may take a little extra courage to get up there. So thank you for doing that.
So,
Sorry, now you can
Yes,
adjourn.
no, that's quite all right. So the meeting is over for the public, and the subcommittees will start their adjournment process.
Very good.
So I will make a motion to adjourn the subcommittee, accept a motion to adjourn the subcommittee of legal affairs. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I make a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole for legal affairs.
Second?
Oh,
There's a second? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. That motion carries. The floor is yours.
For the record, I was opposed.
he wants to stay.
You're welcome to stay.
A motion to adjourn public services.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great, we're adjourned.